Death Guard Miasmic malignifier on the painting table today. So I'm taking an unusual step of putting a video in of the finished effect first. That's to show you what kind of we're going for, and this build is really about the gross diseased flesh effect that I've done, which is different to how the box art and everything is. So if you're not interested in all the base coats and what I'm doing in kind of the base layers, you just want to see how I did that bumpy gross flesh, skip to about the 8-minute mark, and that's where I start that. So as ever, usual YouTube jazz, like, comment, subscribe below. Still fairly new to YouTube, new to doing this, so any comments you do give me certainly do help what I'm going to do in future. Hope you're all enjoying, and I hope I'm getting better every time. So when I built this, I built it into 3 subsections. The pipe part I quite liked, and it is meant to go on the blank end on the big body of the malignifier. I want to do 3 separate kind of scenery pieces. Same thing with the big body part of the malignifier. There is an extra chimney that you can put on, but I chose not to because I want to again do something slightly different at that later date. So a nicely sped up piece here about removing the base, because I don't want the actual circular base that comes with the model. I want to do my own moulded in bases, because I'm probably going to use these more as scenery than actually a gaming piece, although the rules do look fairly good for them. I'll pick the codex up. So you can see there, pair of clippers, hobby knife. Be really careful when you're doing this. One tip I find easy if you're removing pieces from big models is at certain stages flip over the model like that and just score into the base, making sure you don't slice a finger off. Score right across all the parts you want to get, and then you can bend and twist and it almost snaps off, and then you can just tidy the edges up. So I'm doing the base piece. I'm also removing the little drain holes that this model sits into to put back on the feet. And what I like about this actual model is in the background the Death Guard land with these things, and they get planted into the infrastructure of the cities, the sewers and whatever, to spread the plague. Now I'm rebasing this to match my city fight board. And in the background of my head, this is my Death Guard army invading my imperial world and taking over and turning and polluting a city, so it kind of fits in with the background of the model as well, which is really nice. So you can see here I've kept the 2 parts of the stand together, but I've removed a couple of bits, but I've just left enough so that the model can actually sit on the mountings it's meant to, and it keeps it in the right kind of position, so that when I do push it into the scenery, that will keep it going. So I have glued it down now at the stage of putting the footings down, and I'm going to clean up the actual little drain pipey downspout things that go on the bottom of the tubes that are in there, that would actually be, I suppose, part of the city's infrastructure as opposed to the malignifier. I've taken 3 of the large GW kind of oval sized bases, used a green stuff world roller on it to make some cobblestones, and then before it's dry I've then pressed the model into the milli put. So this way actually hopefully this will stick in and stay permanently fixed, rather than having to use super glue, that kind of thing, and then we can build up around it. So it's actually sort of pressed in there, and it'll look like part of the scenery. The one I'm using for the pipe, I want to have like a bit of an off spill of Nurgles rot or something, so again just positioning it in the right place and then sticking that pipe into the milli put itself so that it bonds into the scenery. So these bases, you could use bits of MDF for it, cut an oval of MDF or even a circle or whatever. They're a couple of quid if you buy them from Workshop or your friendly local gaming store. So and matches in nicely with what I did with my very first YouTube video, which was the Necron pylon. So it's something I've been doing with all my armies for the last couple of years, just doing some scenery pieces that I can either have them in a display case with, or I can have them on the table. So when the model's dried, the milli put's solid after a few hours, and it has really sealed the model onto the base. So no need to glue, no need to whatever, and these things are a fairly solid piece of the terrain there. I did test them by trying to snap them off, as you can see there, and thankfully I managed to fail to snap them off those bases, so quite happy with that. Now what I'm doing is adding some texture, so water down PVA on the little palette there, or the lid of my sandbox. Water it down because it helps the PVA soak into the sand when you do put it on, firms a longer bond, takes a bit longer to dry, gives you a better effect at the end. It's about 50-50 watered. So slap that all over. I'm using it to cover any bits where the green stuff roller hasn't actually made the cobble properly, because they're not 100% these things. So I'm covering any bits where the cobble hasn't gone properly. I'm also covering any lines where I've been a little bit messy with how I've carved the structure down, and I'm putting it kind of under the malignifier as well, because it'll be a bit harder to paint if we don't, and you want it to look a bit messy. So just in random patches where you takes your fancy. to really try and blend it into the board. Remember, these are supposed to look like a destroyed city. This is supposed to look like something that's taking over and making everything manky. Now, don't go overboard. You can go overboard. It's up to you. But I'm just putting enough on that I feel comfortable that, you know, it's going to have a nice sort of effect when we finally get this stuff painted. Now you could at this point use a basing pumice. You know, you get some Vallejo pumices, you get some workshop stuff, you get the one I'm particularly fond of, which is the the Reichland mud, that kind of Sterling mud rather. But I'm using sand because that's what I've used on my gaming table. So it's just like consistency across the board. So now just chuck the sand on. Nothing fancy about this sand. This is from a kid's play sand bag that I bought about 15 years ago, whatever it was, when the kids were little. And then all I've done once I've sanded it is I've sprayed black, a real good coverage of the whole model, and then I've taken a retributor armour over the top. Now you could start off from black. The reason I've done the retributor armour is that's what I've done with the Death Guard army, and I think if we're going to put the same colours on in some places, we want the same tones, and also it saves a lot of time painting the brass. So now really I'm using a lot of the same colours that I did for my Death Guard because they should tie in, because this is one of their pieces of kit, using them in slightly different ways. So the body of the malignifier, you see it, I'm not going to do the green, I'm just taking some of the detail. Now you could do the Death Guard detail on the spikes, any kind of different colour you wanted. Whatever colours I use, as ever, I'm going to put in the description down below, so all the colours will be listed down there so you can see exactly how I've used, but feel free to do your own. This is just that inspiration. So the first stage I'm doing, you see, unlike normally, you'd think I always kind of do the bulk of the model first, so I would always do the body of whatever I'm doing first. I'm not doing it this time because you'll see the flesh effect at kind of the 8-minute part we're going to see, but we're laying down some base coats now. So the Death Guard green onto the arrow sections of the symbol, throwing some of the bone colour down on the skulls that are there, and now I'm taking a Rakarth flesh and working that into all the broken and cracked areas of the model where you see that kind of bubonic flesh showing through. Now through this painting guide I'm going to show you on the smaller piece that I'm holding in my hand here, just because it fits on the camera better, and there's kind of less moving around and there's less going to obstruct the camera view, but I will bring the larger piece back in, and obviously that's the bit I showed you at the start as to how we're painted. So here, look, try and be neat and tidy, but if you get a little bit messy, there's always opportunity to tidy up later. And actually some of the effects we're doing, we're putting some washes and things on later that will cover some of your sins if you don't get 100% into the cracks. Now I'm choosing purple to paint around the symbols here on the back where this kind of vent is, and there's a couple of these on the model as well, but I'm using purple because that's my kind of army colours on all my cloth, but obviously go for what you like. Now when you're painting the pustules on these, I've chosen to do the actual circular lumpy pustules in like a nice yellow colour, and I am overlapping onto the body of the model itself, so there's no need to be 100% accurate, and you'll see why in a second we're doing these pustules. And I do yellow because I find that puts a nice base colour down for doing the Nurgles rot that we're going to use later on. But if you use a different colour, that'll give you a different effect. So now we're starting on what is going to be the manky, gross flesh effect. So I'm laying down a Scream Pink, which is a GW colour. You could always use whatever, and I do use some Vallejo colours in this paint as well, which you'll see from below. Now what I'm doing here is kind of painting it from the pustules kind of outwards, because I want the pustules to look like that's what's spreading the rot, and this is kind of where the malignifiers becoming Nurglified from, if that makes any kind of sense. So we're not covering the whole of the body of the malignifier with this colour, we're just doing it in certain patches where I want the really bruised, diseased flesh to show through. Now you could do the whole thing, and you'll see why later on that you could, but I've just picked sections. I've picked sections up the chimney, so to speak. Now we're throwing down Vallejo sepia wash. Any wash would do, but if you're going to use a different wash to what I'm using, make sure it is a dirty, manky wash. You don't want like a flesh-toned kind of wash doing this. Now we're not swamping the whole model. I don't want to touch too much of the body of the model and the pinky flesh area. What I'm looking at doing is doing everything else. So all the metal, the skull, the symbols, the broken flesh going into the model, but leaving the other bits clear. That's because this effect we're going to do now, we want it on the flat paint. Now what's on there, the sort of see-through liquid you can see, that is a mixture of Vallejo crackle medium and Vallejo chipping medium. So there are cracking paints, which GW do excellent cracking paints, but this isn't a cracking paint, this is something slightly different. So this won't crack as such when you paint it first on, like you can see. So it's a 50-50 mix. I've painted it on, I've left it dry, and this is the part where it starts to crack. So now I'm painting the flesh colour back over. Now I've only put that crackle medium and chipping medium mix over the purple. Now we're putting the flesh on, and you can see in some it's starting to crack a little bit, but what this medium does is very, very subtle cracks, and with it being a 50-50 mix that I've used, it'll make the cracks even more subtle, because I'm not going for like the flaking skin off effect all over the model. I want it in certain little bits. So painted it all over, and you can sort of see a couple of cracks. Now what we're going to do is activate the chipping medium that's mixed in. So I'm now using a GW flesh wash, so it's the Reichland flesh shade, and you'll see when I'm painting this on, what it does is it activates the chipping medium that's under there, and we're just trying to get this on the flesh. If it hits the boils and pustules, doesn't too much matter, but we're just trying to hit the flesh, and you'll see what it does is it activates that chipping medium, and you'll see me in a second, you'll see bits flaking off, and you'll see me kind of stabbing where it is flaking off and where it's cracked to open up that paint. And what it does, the paint then peels back, and I'm trying to layer it back on so that it sticks back on to the model in a different place. But it will crack in random places, and this is why you've seen we've put that medium mix over the top of the purple. So as you go around, you'll get some piece will start cracking. If you think it's cracked enough and you think enough has flaked away, you know, don't push too hard on it, be nice and gentle. If you want to make it more peel up, then literally force the kind of brush underneath it. So I've done the whole model like that, and now we've got a mixture of very gentle cracks and patches where it's peeled up. And I'm just going to go over with a dry brush now, very softly, very gently, and put that flesh colour back over the model. Now if you go over the areas where it's cracked or the paint's flaked away, you might drop some of this colour back into the purple. We're going to correct that as we stand now, but try not to go too heavy, nice and gentle, build up very slowly on the model, because we want to be showing those undercolours underneath the model. Now if you hit the metal when you're doing this dry brush, look, if you're doing it gentle enough, actually it looks quite nice having a light pale colour onto the metal, but if you go too heavy we can correct it with a paint later, which we'll see we'll do. So really just dry brush over all the flesh areas to catch the raised bits, start to build multiple layers and multiple tones onto the flesh, because that will definitely add to that effect. So you can see there, that's one level of dry brush. I'll just show you where we're at on the big model. So you can see we've done all the same effects we've done so far onto there. The one thing this model's got, the larger piece has got and the small one hasn't, is the tubes that come out from the body, but we've done that with the Rakkar flesh, like the indented areas. So you can see already the effect is building up, and we're looking quite good. And actually it's quite a decent looking effect at the moment. We've still got a little bit more we want to do. So we've done one flesh tone, which is just the original flesh colour we used, but then I've put some bone colour down, and we're just mixing 50-50 with that bone colour on the wet palette there, just to put another layer of tone onto the body of the model, because obviously this is the bit that's really going to stand out, so you want to just do a little bit of extra work in here to give it justice, for that's the bit you're going to see. Now I really shouldn't have mixed the paint with my dry brush. I'm spending a lot of time here off camera trying to get most of the paint back out, so always try to have a separate brush to mix your paints, otherwise you're going to end up, you know, having way too much paint, and I'm taking so much of it off on my hand there that I really have made a bit of a boo-boo there, but I was a bit rushing. So yeah, try and mix your paints with a different brush that you're actually going to use, because dry brushing, it's called dry brushing for a reason. You don't want too much paint that's sort of soaked into your brush there. So now I'm taking that slightly lighter colour and going back over, and on camera here you can barely see what's going on, but trust me, it kind of is. So now we've worked two highlight layers onto the flesh, and now I'm going to go back over the other colours that we haven't retouched. So onto the skull, and as ever, really thin paint on your brush. As you can see on the wet palette I'm using there, I'll take a little bit of paint from where the blob is, drag it out, so there's very little left actually on there, because I think it's better at this stage to do, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 brush strokes or more over an area and build up the paint gradually to the effect you're happy with, rather than putting too much paint on your brush and then you know, effectively ruining the model. So you'll see when I go back and forward to the wet palette at this point, I actually very rarely touch the blob of paint that's on there. It's more from the edges. Okay, so now we're going to do a bit of work. Again, just retouching the other things. You see the paints that I've put back down, and I've gone over and recovered these. But just with the metal, you can see here. Now this, although it is the same colour as the spray we've used, because we've washed over it, is quite a lot brighter. So just be careful what you're using on it. Be careful how heavy you're going. All right. Now's the interesting part. So we're now going to go back onto the flesh. You can see I've done some of it already. Now what I've done is I've taken the original Screamer Pink that we had, and I've dropped in a few drops of a Vallejo glaze medium. I think GW do the equivalent version to make a very thin glaze. Now we're not repainting this on, this is incredibly watery, it's probably a bit more than 50-50 into the medium, and then I'm going around and dropping that glaze into the sunken, cracked areas of skin where I want that pink and purple to show through. Now we're taking a Death Guard, not a Death Guard green, the, what's it called, going completely blank, Nurgles Rot. You do blank sometimes, it's fine. So we're doing Nurgles Rot, we're doing a thing there, and this is again watered massively down with a glaze medium, and just painting that into certain cracks, crevices and areas. Then I'm dropping in, like I've done with my actual Death Guard models, into the broken areas of skin with a contrast paint, which is the Majos Purple, just to bring the skin up. So although the broken sunken areas of skin do have a purple in them, they've got a purple broken flesh tone. The sunken areas on the body of the model have got that watered down Screamer Pink flesh tone. So there are multiple tones coming through. Taking some nihilakh oxide now, and just dropping that into and around the areas that I want to look decayed on the brass, because again, not rust, it's that decay colour. Oxidization, it's even in the word. Now I'm taking a pure Nurgles Rot that hasn't had anything in, so the other one that I'm using about the wash is a little bit of Nurgles Rot, a little bit of Death Guard Green, and then 50% glaze mix. So this is pure Nurgles Rot. If you are going to mix the glaze like I've done before and just put some of that very light green glaze, go really, really careful, don't put much of the Nurgles Rot in at all. So, you know, you're probably safer if you're not doing it before, doing Death Guard Green with a glaze medium, because Nurgles Rot can have some weird effects if you try and glaze out of it, but I've done it because I fancied it. So dropping some Nurgles Rot down, and now I'm showing you just on the main model this glaze that I did with the multiple greens. So the Death Guard Green, a drop of Nurgles Rot, and then the glaze medium, just showing you where I've put that onto the main part of the model. So that's essentially the model done, all the techniques we've used. Very different to what the box art shows, and I've gone for a bit more of a grosser, really sunken broken skin, and hopefully on some of these close-up shots where we're holding this model closer to it, you can see how multi-layered this is. So I hope that's inspired. I hope you like some of it. I hope maybe some of you will pick that stuff up. If you liked it, fantastic, you know, thumbs up, subscribe. If you didn't like it, drop a comment down below what you do different. But yeah, hope you enjoyed it. There'll be another Death Guard video coming out soon, and there'll be more hobby content as I move on, because I think my Death Guard army is nearly finished now. I'll try and do maybe some sort of showcase for it if it's something that you guys are interested in. So I'll see you next time.